Hey everyone, it's me again, Mobius Y, and I'm here to discuss something a little new for you. This will be the first episode of kind of a series that I'm going to do, dubbed the Tactics Talk. So I'm going to do this on top of Tank Talk and Tanker Talk. So in this instance here, I don't really have video going on in the background just to visually aid what I'm discussing. It's just some generic comment gameplay. It's not what I wanted to put up. I had major issues with the video production, so I eventually had to trash it. I was pretty upset with that, but this is basically coming out a week later than I intended to because of it, unfortunately. So, and sadly, the people that suffer are you guys, my viewers, and I do apologize for that. But needless to say, I can go over what I intend to cover without giving visual aid. Even without any of it, it'll make this make this a lot easier to make and put out for you guys. So with this first episode here, I'm just going to jump right into it. I would like to cover something that I physically I see firsthand that people seem to not really struggle with. Just it's a concept that people tend to not grasp, and that is properly prioritizing your targets that you are going to shoot at. And I'm going to be describing it from mostly a medium tanker's perspective. It's just where I'm more what I'm more familiar with. I do have some artillery games behind me, but not nearly as much as a lot of people. I only have somewhere about 550 artillery games behind me. So, anyways, prioritizing targets, very easy to say, very difficult to do. It seems like people just don't really follow it. I would say that one of the worst examples I came across was I was in a high tier game on Mountain Pass, I believe it was, and I spawned in the northwest corner, and I went down to the south pass where a lot of the fighting happens, and I had about 5 tanks come with me. We came across 2 Tiger 2s, an E75 and an E100, and I was in a medium tank. I can't remember which one. I believe it was the Patton at the time. I just can't remember off the top of my head, but it doesn't matter. Anyways, the gist of it is, while I was trying to shoot out the E75 that attempted to flank all 6 of us, as well as the Tiger 2 that was supporting him, all 5 of my teammates were shooting the E100, and they weren't aiming at the right places, and they were just not damaging it. Which, whenever I see it, call this a little biased, but that's just dumb. It really is. After shooting at something, once maybe twice, and you just can't pen the SLB, it's time to turn your gun somewhere else and shoot at something else that you can hurt. In this instance, because the E100 ended up soaking up so many shots and so much potential damage that was not made on the tanks that could have been knocked out a lot quicker had all of us been shooting them. They literally took out 4 of us out of the 6 of us that went over there. So it ended up being just me and another friendly E75 that survived that encounter. It took 6 of us to bring down 4 of them. It was basically a trade. They destroyed 4 of us, while we only destroyed 4 of them. It just wasn't very smart gameplay from my perspective. What could have easily been much more efficient, I'm going to say, was if the 2 Tiger 2s had just been focused on, because they were mostly exposed the whole time. If they had been focused on from the get-go and knocked out much more quickly, and then had we focused on the E75, who had his broadside exposed to about half of us while he was trying to flank, we could have knocked out those 3 guns much more quickly than just focusing on an E100 that's going to soak up shots. I typically, even when I'm grinding, I typically concentrate myself, when the situation presents itself, I concentrate my fire on the lower tier tanks for 2 reasons. One, they usually have less armor. There are exceptions, a T95, for example, is just trolley. A T29 heavy tank or a T32 heavy tank that's properly hulled down, its turret will give you problems. T-32's turret is extremely troll. I bounce off the side of that all the time with any of my tier 10 mediums. It's a nightmare coming across a hull down T-32 in my opinion. So I mean, it's a pain in the butt to come across those. So if there's other tanks in front of me that are either more exposed or they just have less armor overall, I focus on them, and I typically focus on lower tier tanks because they will have less armor, but more importantly, they have a smaller hit point pool, so they can sustain less total damage as well. The faster you knock out a gun on the enemy team is the faster that gun is no longer shooting at you. It's all a matter of basically balancing it out. The more quickly you can eliminate multiple guns on the enemy team while losing, you know, 1 or 2 on your team, you will rapidly gain, your entire team will rapidly gain just an advantage in sheer numbers over the other team. If 4 guys make a push on and run into 7 people, and you know what winds up happening is those 4 guys use proper concentrated fire, cycling who takes the hits and who takes the damage, and just knocking out enemy tanks one at a time. You know, maybe they'll lose 1 or 2 of them, but they can easily knock out those 7 guys, no problem. They just lost. That means that those 4, they only lost 2 tanks on their whole team to take out half the other team with proper target prioritization. You know, calling out, hey, this guy needs to go first. You know, so on and so forth. Now, this can easily be extended to artillery in the sake of which targets are easier to hit, as well as which targets are a major threat to the team. Now, the one thing that I will always call out to friendly artillery whenever I see it is a T110 E3. Those things are just a nightmare at long range. I don't see why people tend to turn their guns and try out-sniping an E3 that is even mildly hull down from 300 meters away. It doesn't work. And even worse is when you have artillery ignoring that E3, particularly an exposed E3, and going after some medium tank that is in the midst of some big 7-on-7 fight between 2 teams. You know, that's all well and good. That E3 is a major problem, though. Something like an E3 or a hull down E100 or a hull down T29 or a KV-1S in a strong position, or even things like British AT2 holding down a choke point. Those are major threats and can stop an entire advance on certain choke points of maps all on their own. And they are something that need to be taken out as quickly as possible and should be priority 1 for artillery units, frankly. So, and sadly, it's just not, doesn't really seem to be what's the term here? Doesn't exactly seem to be a practice method that happens. Another little thing about prioritizing your targets is you also need to focus your gun on tanks that are not just a direct threat to your team or a major threat to your team, or simply knocking down weaker support vehicles so that you can swarm and take down a major team threat. But another one would be direct threats to yourself. If you see in several of my gameplay videos, or even in some of the tank talks that I've gone over, if I see an enemy tank coming after me, literally just bum rushing me in an attempt to take me down, I will back off and focus on that person, and you know, I will call for help and request fire on that person right away, because I don't need them bum rushing me and damaging me unnecessarily. You know, that's basically them sacrificing themselves to put 1 shell in me, and that's not something that I want to happen. I don't want to take a very unnecessary hit, and it's even worse when it's something like a high tier tank destroyer, especially if it's something like an Object 704 or Object 268 or an E4. You know, they just roll up, put a shell in me and deal over 900 damage. Well, there goes half my health pool, you know, in one hit. Sure, that might be down a tank, but now my team's forward spotter and major aggressor is down to half health, and I have to play even more cautious because I can't take another hit like that, so to speak. So, you know, when people are bum rushing me, I target them immediately. It doesn't matter what they are. It just does not matter what they are. And if I'm with a platoon, I say, hey, this guy's rushing me. I need shots on him right away. They often repay in kind. It's rare where I'll be off on my own and they can't get shots. They can't get shots on them. You know, but those situations do happen. And you know, it's just using your head. You know, this is a very tactics-oriented game, and you hear that said about a lot of things, namely first-person shooters and whatnot, or even some third-person shooters. But and I've played a lot of them, and they're really just not actually employed. In this instance, you know, you actually have to employ a strong sense of tactics and to be repeatedly successful. And it's actually a lot easier than you would think it is. You know, once you try it out for a little while, once something works, once you find out something that works and you try it out for a while and it just continues to work, then you just know what to do instinctively, you know. In this case, when you're engaging multiple tanks in one instance, and it's either just you or there's several other tanks, you know, picking on the tanks with the lower health pools or the weaker armor, or basically the tanks that have sustained way more damage, you know, just so that you can knock them out more quickly. It's always a benefit to your team. Taking out one tank on the other team doesn't just benefit you; it benefits your whole team. You know, and I mean, sometimes you'll be knocked out of the game for it, especially from bum rushers. I mean, that's I had a game on Mines Standard. I was playing one of the tier 10 mediums. I am quite certain it was the M48 patent again. And I got to the center area of the map on Mines, basically at the mines in the very middle there. And I got YOLO rushed by 4 different tanks in a row. I was not a happy camper, but they all died just to take me out. And this is probably the paintballer in me saying this, but I will take a 4-to-1 trade any day. We were still even in tanks. I think we only lost 1 tank on either team at the time. So it was still 14 on 14. So sacrificing 4 tanks to take out 1 is just a really bad trade at that point of the game. It was no longer 14 to 14. They were now down 13 to 10. So basically we were up 3 tanks on them is essentially what happened. It was actually more than that, because in that strong position that I was at, I was able to knock out and help knock out 2 additional tanks. So they were actually down 13 to 9. It was just a really silly thing to do. But I was able to use the radial commands to call for help and request fire on those that were coming after me, and my teammates supported me where I needed it, and we were able to knock down those tanks very quickly. It was enough. They had enough time to put at least 1 or 2 shots into me each time, though. And if that happens enough times, then you're going to get taken out. And that's why I am not a huge fan of being YOLO rush, and that's why it's also why I prioritize and request fire on enemies that are doing that. I'll also do the same thing if I see it happening to a friendly teammate. Usually because if an enemy tank is bum rushing a friendly, it means that that enemy tank is very exposed to me. They've got their stronger frontal armor facing my teammate. So I'll be able to get either side or even rear shots into them, which are basically guaranteed damaging shots. So we can take down that tank much more quickly and possibly even save a teammate that is in a very strong position to continue to assist the team with where he's at, with either spotting or getting some good damaging shots in or some flanking in, what have you. So every little bit helps is basically how it goes. So anyways, just a quick little recap, you simply want to single out targets that have the lesser armor and the lesser HP pools, And on top of that, if you see a tank that is basically down to maybe 1 or 2 shots from death, without sacrificing yourself, you want to try to take them out. You know, about the only time that charging in and sacrificing yourself to take down that super weak tank, about the only time that's really a viable option is when your team is already way ahead in numbers. You know, say you're up 9 tanks to their 4 or 9 tanks to their 3. Then that's a viable option. But if you're even, trading 1 for 1, really not worth it. And especially if they have more tanks than you do, trading 1 to 1, not really a very good option. Because you always want to try and maintain a tank, basically a tank-to-tank lead over the other team. You know, take out as many of their tanks as you can while losing as few tanks as you can. And platooning up can definitely assist with that. Properly calling out your targets and prioritizing certain targets and just picking on the same guys until that tank is out of the game. Then they can no longer shoot you. They can no longer shoot anybody else on your team. It's very, very effective. Helps you take down tanks really quickly. It helps you whittle down the other enemy team extremely quickly. And it's just a very important mindset that I think everybody should employ. So, anyways, I'm done babbling, so I'll let you guys go. I hope that I made some sense and that everybody's able to pick up off of something from listening to me ramble like this. As always, your viewership greatly appreciated. I am amazed at this channel is just growing, and it's always, every time I look at it, I just kind of blink and go, is this really happening? Alright, so we'll keep in touch. Stay tuned. I'll have more on the way. You guys are awesome. Take her easy, and happy tanking.